So excited that you're all joining us. I'm still a little unfamiliar with Google Meet, so it still takes me a little while to get navigated. We're all into this Zoom world. So thank you everybody for coming today or watching on demand for this video. When the questions were starting to come in the side hustle, the school counselor side hustle, about who does academic planning, who does college planning, how does it work, how did you get started? And I thought, this would be a great time to get some people together, and either you're already doing it or you may be interested in doing it. And so I thought maybe sharing my journey and kind of where I have come from and what I've done and what we've built would be really beneficial. So if you do have any questions at any point, you can unmute yourself, you can shout it out, or you can definitely put it in the chat as well. I'll kind of try to keep my eye on that. And so I'll introduce myself. So let me move here. So my name is Dr. Amanda Sterkamanda, and my current role is I am director of a very large dual enrollment program here in Florida, and I manage about 3,200 students, 45 high schools, lots of concurrent instructors, and so super exciting. In my before I took this position, I was a school college counselor and I loved it. It was always my goal and passion to be able to really help students through the high school process, and specifically the high school to college process. And I'm going to kind of talk about my journey and how I wrote College Unmazed and sort of where it's at right now. That will be part of the discussion, but also discussion just really sort of my path. And I am fortunate, Tim, Dr. Poynton is here hanging out with me for a little bit. I didn't know if you could make it, or so one of the things in sort of my life, when I started writing and doing College Amaze, and again, I'll get to that, was really surrounding myself with people that were passionate about academic planning and college admissions. And so Dr. Poynton Tim is one of the people that, especially over the last few years, has really inspired me, and we have collaborated, that's a key part in academic, any type of consulting, is really planning and collaborating and partnerships, right? Is developing the people that can develop you. So Dr. Poynton, Tim, why don't you just introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, I'm Tim Poynton. I'm at my day job is as a professor at UMass Boston, up in Boston, Massachusetts. And yeah, had the good fortune of Amanda reaching out to my colleague Rich and I, about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago at this point. And it's been quite a ride and a journey. I think we've come up with some really cool stuff that can help students and families. So yeah. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. And Dr. Rich Lohan, he is our third partner in what we're doing now on sort of a national scope. And he is not with us today, but he's been a great collaborator all the way through. So let's kind of get to, I think, why Tim and I do what I do, and probably you as potential college counselors do what you do, is really this idea that, making the high school and college process much simpler, right? Some of our statistics, and this is coming out from the National College Access Networks, but basically, right now, 42% of students who start college don't finish college. And that's a really disturbing statistic when you think of the time and the money investment and everything that's put into it, and the thoughts, and students without degrees and with debt. That's like the worst time. It's like a double whammy, right? You don't have the degree, but then you have the debt of not being able to have the degree. And so I know that's a huge motivator for us. But families, 90% do believe that college is an investment, and so they really want to put that. And some parents are able to invest a little bit more than some other parents. And so I know one thing that I know Tim and I and Rich are really passionate about is sort of students understanding what their options are for colleges, right? And understanding you don't have to go to an extremely expensive school. You can go to a state community college or a university, or you could go to a private institution. They're not, even though the sticker price is sometimes shocking, most students don't pay that full sticker price. And so really making college accessible to all students, and really what comes with that, and why academic planners and college planners and consultants are so important, is it allows families to help navigate that process much easier, right? You sort of have the person to go to. And maybe Tim, but I know the ASCA says that it's they're supposed to have what, 250 students to one, and I think the national average is like 1 to 450. Do you know what the national average is? It's something like that.
I saw it the other day, but I'll get the exact number wrong. But yeah, it's far too high at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, students, and parents are looking for information, and they're looking for resources. And that's why they really do seek out sometimes professionals, whether it's just on a very one to one, a few times basis, or much more extensive with packages and so forth. But that definitely is a process. And, that's why one of the things we wrote College Unmazed is to be a very reasonable process, to parents to have that information without, having to spend a lot. And so we definitely want to make sure that students have the information they need to be successful, one, going through the process, but also successful once they get to college, right? And that they have the tools to be able to continue on and not be part of that 42% statistic that does not finish college in time. So, I was going to talk a little bit about my path, and this might look very similar to your path and what maybe you're thinking. Like I said, I was a school counselor for over a decade in some very high-powered um, state schools, like public high schools, but also some international schools as well, and loved it. I mean, that was my goal, right? That was what I wanted to do. And I loved working with families, and I still love working with families, just on a broader scope. And I remember when I came to Florida from Nicaragua, that's where one of my schools was, is in Nicaragua. Is I was one counselor in one building to 400 students, and I had no support services. I was doing testing, I was doing new students coming in, I was doing grad evals, I was, doing the mental health aspects, I was doing the academic planning. And what sort of struck out to me was, as students were coming in, really, I was saying 90% of what I said every day, I said to all students, right? It was sort of the bulk information. And so I started thinking, is like, how could I sort of flip the script, right? And that's kind of when flipped classrooms were really popular, about videos, and, you watch the video at home and then when you do the homework at school. I'm like, how can I sort of flip the script and disseminate information both to parents and students so they have it? Well, at the time I was working for, and I still do, I work for the same college, and they have these rules on what you can send out, and FERPA and everything else. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to start a blog. I'm going to just start writing. I love to write. And so, what I think is important here is I never started out thinking I was going to write a book and a curriculum and do one-on-one counseling. Like, that wasn't my goal. My goal was just, how do I help my families? And so I just started blogging and writing. So anytime a student would come in with a question, like, what about this scholarship, or what about this college, or what about this program, I just started to write and sort of answer those questions. And I started getting a pretty good little following. I had a little email list. It was nice and simple. I paid for a simple website, like $200, and it was at a pace that I was comfortable with. And what I started finding out is I was building lesson plans. Like, this information now, if I could just add maybe a little activity, like, okay, here's a scholarship. Well, what's the scholarship sheet I would put with it, right? What would be now for them to reinforce that idea? So I started working with a program called Vengage. Some of you might know Canva really well. Same program, same type of attributes and so forth. And so with each blog, I tried to add one activity or something that parents and students could do. And I started using it within my own school program. And all of a sudden, my students using that curriculum went from about $800,000 worth of scholarships to over $10 million worth of scholarships because they were having the information prior to coming into my office. And so when they came in, I could really sit with them, have a conversation, talk with them, and say, you know, what are you doing? So instead of just talking about general scholarships, I could say, okay, which scholarship are you applying to? Let's look at your resume. Let's look at this. Let's look at your essay. So I was able to hone in more on individual help versus sort of that general generic information. So started building the curriculum and it was working. It was working for my school. And I reached out to our local summer camp programs and I said, hey, would you ever be interested in running some like teen summer camps and focusing on academic planning and college curriculum? And I should show you, I think my first book is over there on my bookshelf. And it literally was, hole punched, bound, printed from the computer, super simple. But they're like, yeah, we would love to do that. And so I started sort of this marketing with friends and with the community. And what was nice is when I partnered with an organization like our little summer camps, they did the marketing. They put in their camp brochure, right? And so while I would send it out on Facebook and stuff like that, I didn't really have to pay for any marketing. I was able to partner with another organization and they charged just like they would a summer camp. And then I was able to get a cut of that. And so that was a great way for me to really hone in on what works for me. What was my speaking style? Is my sort of sequence the way it should be? And it really provided me sort of the confidence that I needed to say, hey, I really have something here. So with that, and about this time is when I realized my curriculum really worked. So I started actually, I published it. So different high schools and programs could use it. Um, but what was sort of, I didn't realize is families started contacting me after the summer camps and saying, do you do one-on-one services? Like, can you work with my family? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Or they wanted me, some of my former students that I no longer was under, or that I wasn't watching or being their counselor, I guess. And so they said, would you help my families? I said, sure. I said, I'm building out the program. It's new. And so my first year, you can see under the one-on-one, I really didn't charge that much. I think my first client, I charged like $600, like, and I did a lot of work for $600. But what I did is I was able to, again, hone in on the program, what worked, what sequence, what were my resources, how did I sort of connect with the families. And again, once it built my confidence, but it also built the curriculum that I needed. And then what happened is then that family told two or three families, and then two or three families told two or three families, and it kept growing and growing. And I then at that point, when money was starting to come in, I started really looking at outside marketing. So what could I do to actually, maybe get some other type of clients, right? And so I use things like Thumbtack, which is a really great, you pay for it and then you put a quote out. Like, so a parent will come to the website and we could go and like, if you need a plumber, you could go to this website. If you need a mental health counselor or a family counselor, there's lots of different, sort of consulting business type things that you could go to Thumbtack for. And you create your profile, and if you see a match, you can tell Thumbtack to send a message sort of on your behalf. And if they're interested, they click on it, you get their phone number and you can give them a call and so forth. I also, using my curriculum, started going with TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers. So with the curriculum I've already had, I now I have this curriculum, I have these lesson plans. Well, maybe other counselors want to use the same stuff that I have. And then, oh, sorry, I started going then to using Facebook and doing some ads and different things, and started to dabble into my outside marketing. Still not an area I'm fantastic at. It's one of my areas that, as Tim knows, I try, but it's definitely sometimes it is nice having somebody else do it for you. But that was a way that I felt comfortable with. I kept more money for myself, and I was able to sort of go at my own pace, and that was always really important, especially if you're truly going to do this as a side hustle. Is really important. And then as I started getting bigger, taking on, 10, 15, 20 clients, I was able to realize that now, I was not only marketable, but now I was being sought out. And being sought out, I was able to increase those prices. So originally going from, $600, $700 for sort of a year package to now almost $3,500 for a package. And I was also able to provide more services. I can go, just like we're all over the nation, can go wherever. But then I was also able to set my own boundaries. Being able to charge a little bit more, I don't need as many clients. So, if I want to, usually 10 to 15 clients for me is about where I like to be. It's where I can manage and I can be able to provide the services that I feel um, I can do, and that's really going to be up to you, sort of where that sort of balance point is and how fast you want to go and how much you want to go. But it is really important not to take on too much and to set those boundaries, because any consulting, it takes a lot more time than you think you do, because you got the prep work, plus you have, the sessions in general, you have the follow-up emails, you have the resources you send out, you have the essay reviews and things like that. So it definitely is much more time consuming. So one suggestion is just about price point, and we can talk about that as we get going. And at the end, I'm going to totally open this up for questions. And again, if you have questions, let me know throughout. But I do think, realizing how much, one, your expertise is really important, but two, sort of what the market is going to hold, what's kind of the going rate maybe in your area or within your state. And then also thinking, now you're not bound to your state, so you could tap into other markets that aren't local, and so you might be able to charge a little bit more, but you also have to feel comfortable with what you're able to charge. Sort of going forward, because all that stuff is one working for me, is now really positioning myself for more networking, right? So joining organizations, like for myself, I joined like a women leadership entrepreneurship group, just to hear their ideas. So whether they're in marketing or business, or they're selling skincare or whatever it might be, I can still draw information from them, especially being in the educator field. We don't always have, I did not anyways, that sort of business mindset, right? Because we have this nonprofit mindset. And so it is hard that was probably the hardest thing for me, was to pivot from the nonprofit mentality to the for-profit mentality. And so joining those other business groups of people that have been successful at that has really allowed me to sort of hone in on my message. What am I doing? But also with schools, other professionals, has been able to do that. Tim, did you want to add anything? You do a lot of consulting, like you just did one for a school recently. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, just I don't do as much as I used to since the kids, um, but no, I think, yeah, what you've I agree with everything that you've said so far. The marketing part is hard and certainly unnatural,
Yeah.
um, for folks like us. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, when we're more cerebral and we love analyzing and research, and we just think information should be free, right? We want to be able to offer it to everybody, and but it's hard, because that with that knowledge, you really do need to, you can capitalize on it, right? Because when you do become sort of an expert in a field, you should be able to monetize that a little bit. So I was thinking of kind of a list of sort of my pros and cons. Like, so it's kind of starting this path. As I was telling you, I really didn't start out wanting to be right here. Like, I never thought that this would be it. Now, when I look back, it all makes sense. And I could see where I was sort of walking to it. Some of my pros was sort of the ability to create. I love all these little infographics and PowerPoints. Like, it really makes me excited. And what I found with being able to use it in my own personal business, I then was able to really leverage some of these resources in my own school, right, in my own college. And so, like, my little handbooks, they're talked about all through Florida because they're like, oh, Amanda's little handbooks. And it's because I taught myself Venn and how to create a nice infographic and so forth. So that ability to create and design my own path is, it's rewarding. And sometimes when the going gets tough in my nonprofit college job, the college on May stuff is what keeps me going, right? It gives me that refresh, like I'm moving forward, things are going well. Again, I mentioned the cross use, right? So a lot of the stuff that I was able to create sort of personally and through my business, I was able to use it through for my school resources as well. So I think it made my program better than not. I remember one time I asked, I probably shouldn't say this, but I will. I asked marketing for a poster, and they're like, you're not, we're not going to do any better than you do. And they were kind of joking with me, and they're like, do you see what your stuff is? Like, your stuff is really good. Like, keep doing what you're doing. So I'm like, okay. So now I just do it myself and put it out, and um, it makes it a lot easier. But again, I taught myself that. Also, I've become an expert in the field. It's allowed me to really research and dig in and meet with other professionals, and really, for the first time, say, I know this information. I feel like I belong. This is, how I can sort of capitalize on it. Building partnerships with people like Tim and Rich, and all across the nation because of my work. There was a recent national survey that they put me on to, audit it and review it, and I was one of 8 people. So I get asked to do that stuff now, and I didn't, just a few years ago. And then it's just a bank of resources. So whether, again, I'm using it for sort of my school purposes or using it for my business, was really important. So what were some of the cons? Some of the things that, like, I sort of had to deal with as I've gone through this process. Um, I put expertise as third in my list because for a long time, I sort of felt like I shouldn't be charging this much money. I shouldn't be doing this. Like, really, everybody should have this information for free. And so it still is. It's still hard to sort of pivot that mindset that I belong here. I know my information. I'm good at what I do. And some of you might be easier than I was, but the other one is navigating school policies. We're very cognizant, and Tim is as well. Reading our college operating procedures, knowing what we can share and what we can't share, and how we do it. Not using school resources, not I never take on my own students that I have. I will refer them on to someone else, and that's why I like Thumbtack, because then you can find people all over the country, and there's no, um, you know, crossover there. Also, just your time, making sure that you're not doing some of this work on school hours during work hours if you are going to do it as a true side hustle. But that's something just to pay attention to, because I do really appreciate my job, and maybe eventually, go do college on Maze full time, but right now it works for me and my family. Uh, Other thing is sort of that marketing of self, which we've already talked about. Tim and I both said that can be difficult. It's kind of like writing your resume, right? How do you talk about some of the things that you've done in your statistics? Just time. Tim has a family, I have a family, and trying to balance this idea of the money's great and one more client, but what does one more client do to the karate lessons and taking my daughter to across the the city for different meetings and activities. And so you have to be very cognizant, especially when people are paying you, that I feel like we need to give that service and setting those boundaries. For example, I have a very clear contract that I have with everybody, and I say this is how many sessions you get once a month, and this is what you can expect from me: this follow-up email, this information, your to-do list, and so forth. So having that contract is really important. And Tim had to go for another meeting, so but having that sort of contract so they know what your expectations are, and on both sides, so when they're not, um, when there's questions or issues, you can go back to the contract. So, for example, next week, I'm actually heading out on vacation for 2 weeks. Very excited, ready for it, as I'm sure all of you are. And, this week, it's been my whole, because I had to scrunch in all of my clients back to back to back to back. So time is very limited this week. And, I let my family know this is my schedule, this is what I'm doing, and we work through it. Lastly, I think the other con is sometimes when we start out, we don't have a direction. And so the hard part is kind of figuring out, do I like more academic planning? Do I like more tutoring? Do I like more college planning? Do I like dealing with, do I want students with like disabilities and dealing with that? And sort of figuring out which direction you want to go. I've honed in and scrapped things. I had a magazine for a while and I scrapped that. So it's okay to say, you know what, this was working for right now, and now I need to change, and this is what I'm going to do. But sometimes you're, being open to that direction, and being self-aware that maybe it's time to change is also very important, I would say, in this whole process. So if I was you, what would I do to start? First thing is I would really think about what are your strengths and what are your passions. So again, my purpose always from the forefront was to provide information for families and make it accessible. And two, to really make sure that my creativity and my passion could shine through infographics and writing and stuff like that. And that's where I started from. And then I looked around, was anybody else doing this? And if they were, I liked what they did, I tried to mimic some of what they did. I looked at their websites and I looked at how did they draft their contracts, or how did they draft their wording for their marketing. Next, really, once you kind of know those strengths and those passions and what you're sort of thinking, really looking at what your business plan looks like. Are you looking for just picking up individual sessions, which can be really nice? Hey, if you need me, call me. Here's my number. I'll meet with you after school. This is what we can do. I really like those because the follow up doesn't need to be there as much. Do you want to do packages? Do you want to stay with? Yeah, Leslie, I can share that contract with you, for sure. And so, what does that look like? Three, gather information and do what I call a SWOT analysis. I didn't coin that term. It definitely is out there, but it's a business term. And you're looking for what's already in the area. What are my strengths? What's my business's weaknesses? What are some of the good things going for it? Like, what do I have that nobody else has? And then maybe what are your threats? Who are your competitors? Who are the people that you need to watch out for or partner with or whatever. So gathering that information so you understand what's going on is really important, and then building those resources. And then lastly is implement and refine. And every time, like I said, you got to change. You got this worked, this didn't work. So keep going this way, keep doing this, and you kind of figure that out. Always implement and refine. And I would like to say that this is cyclical. So while on here it looks like, it's kind of longitudinal, it's really much more cyclical, because when you implement and refine, you find new strengths, new passions, your business plan changes. So maybe it should really be a circle, but So something to think about. So don't be afraid to try something and not have it work, right? That's part of the process of learning. Like I said, if I showed you my first book, you'd be like, ah, it's like a Word document. Now it looks so different. All right. So I was going to talk just for a few minutes just about my workbook and sort of how I conceptualize college admissions and academic planning. And when I started, one of my first goals I thought originally was I'm going to share this with all the counselors of my area, and they're going to be super excited. And I'm going to share my PowerPoints, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel, because I know as a counselor of 1 to 400, I was like drowning. Like it was so hard to create like a FAFSA PowerPoint. I'm like, I wish somebody just had a FAFSA PowerPoint they could just hand me, right? And here's the new information. um it didn't work that way. So I thought, oh, great. People are going to want to share my information. They're going to want to use my infographics. And so my original goal, and I've kind of shifted and now I've kind of come back to it just because of what was going on, is to support counselors. And so when I started writing the second version of College Unmazed was really as a school curriculum or as a private college curriculum, like any counselor educator that wanted to come in and sort of teach it, and know like, okay, I don't have time to create an entire workbook of things, or I don't want to create the teacher recommendation form, or I don't want to, that this could basically be like a curriculum in a box. Like you get the information and you can go teach it, and hopefully make some money on it or teach it to your students. So what we have now, and this is what Tim and Rich and I worked on for 2 years, we thought this project was going to be 6 months, and it was over 2 years. So note that things take longer sometimes than expected. So we focus in on academic planning first, and this would be really sort of that ninth, 10th, 11th grade type. And I love talking about this stuff. I love academic planning. I love sitting down with a kid and like, okay, what are you going to take your freshman year? What are you going to take your sophomore year, junior, senior? Why are you doing this academy? You're doing dual enrollment, you're doing AP, and making it all fit for the student. That's like my favorite thing. So we talk about building what we call your U factor, which is sort of those skills that are unique to you, your passions, your strengths, who you are, your character. That's first and foremost. We talk about building your academic factor through programs, through grades, through testing like ACT, SAT, building something called your career factor, which would be your knowledge of careers, your knowledge of yourself, of degrees, like do I want a certificate or associate's degree or master's, doctorate, whatever, and then really bringing in career pathways, right? So if you're interested in being right before here, I was on a Zoom with somebody and they want to be a pediatrician. Okay, so let's look at, the STEM career pathway. What do you need? What classes do you need? And lastly, money factor, because, again, going back to the only 42% of students don't graduate from college, money is a huge factor, and I don't think we do enough at preparing students ahead of time. We usually talk about money and scholarships at the very end, the end of senior year, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should really be talking about it freshman, sophomore year. So this is sort of our thought on if a student could have these four factors, they would be sort of college and career ready. If you want this poster, I have one behind me. I got one there. You can just go on to this link, and I'd be more than happy to send you a copy. It's like a front and a back, so I can send you two if you want to. I got like 1,000 of them, so feel free. And then lastly, we're like, okay, now we want to focus more on the college process. So we come up with a system called lead strategy, and it's how do you build a college list? How do you explore colleges through like college visits, through different admission types? How do you actually apply? So your documents that you need, different types of admissions, applications, different type of deadlines, and really walking them through that entire step. how to make a decision. That's when a lot of college counselors, I don't think we do enough of. And I never want to tell a kid, like, you should take this school or you need to go to this college, but we need to teach them how to make an informed decision. And how do you bring in like thoughts and feelings along with sort of those statistical information, right? Like graduation rates and retention rates and what they do. And so that's really important. And I don't think even as school counselors, we do enough of that. It's like, oh, well, where do you want to go? What's your fit? And I don't really like the word fit per se. We use something called the 6 keys that broadens what fit actually is. Like, is it your academic match? Is it your career match? Is it your financial match, your personal match, and student outcomes and student support, like 508 adaptive services, tutoring, that type of stuff. But fit, like, what does fit mean? Like, what's my fit compared to your fit? And we're like, it's a feeling. Well, it's more than a feeling, right? It's, you can be informed and actually really think about it. And then lastly, I think as definitely as college counselors, we need to do more on how do you succeed once you go to college, and developing a plan on, finances. Or do you have to work? Now that you know like what your award money is, how much you're going to have to pay, how much loans you need, what does that mean financially, right? What's your payment options? What are you going to do? Your academic, one of the things I regret is I didn't really understand clubs and activities until much later in my college years. I wish I would have known that from the get-go, and would have known like who to connect with. And then lastly, that social integrations. What's sort of the do I want to join a sorority or fraternity, and do what about relationships, and what about volunteering, and what about the climate and culture, especially in light of the LGBTQIA things that are going on, and um, you know minority students, like, where do you fit in, where do you feel comfortable? Those are all really important things that we need to discuss. So again, if you would like a copy of these posters, more than happy to send them out to you for free. So curriculum in a box. So like I said, what I did is we created, and there's a box is behind me. Literally, you can open it up, and it's got a student workbook. It's got guided lesson plans. It's got downloadable printables already ready. It has the contracts. It has the PowerPoints. Tons of resources, CDO, this college data organizer. It's really cool. That's another presentation another time. So some cool stuff. So something, if you're interested as a counselor or interested as personally, it's a good way maybe to get started until you have your own curriculum. You can definitely use ours, but you don't have to. You can definitely do it on your own and try it out. Just kind of depends on, again, what's your speed, where's your expertise, where do you want to focus in on, but this might be a good option for you. That just talks about what comes in the box. So let's open it up. We got about 20 minutes. And if you're still on, I know there's people on. If you guys want to ask any questions, unmute yourself. If any of you want to share sort of your story, let's open up the last 20 minutes for any conversation you guys want. I know a lot of us are multitasking today, right? It's how many times one of the participants said, "Stick, I'm on like I think volleyball camp," you said. And so I'm sure stuff is going on. And
So I'm
there
sitting
she is.
outside because I've got people. Well, the girls are coming in, and I've got balls everywhere, so I moved outside. So this is something that I've been toying with, but I really thought I've been a school counselor for 15 years. I know that I'm very good at my job, and I help a lot of students, and I'm blessed to work in a district where I do have support, and I have ASCA approved caseload, so I'm able to do things and help students in my region. But what's really piqued my interest is I've had colleagues. I live in Illinois, and I live at the very bottom of Illinois, so Southern Illinois, but I'm from the Chicagoland area, and I have a lot of friends that are venturing off and doing independent college counseling, because they just have said the value is there. People want our services, and this is a great way to supplement income. Because let's just be real, like I feel like where I live, the cost of living is not that bad, but I also, like, this past year, we were begging for a raise. It doesn't even match cost of living increases. Like, it's getting out of hand. And so how can I capitalize without, like, having control of my schedule, basically? So I kind of, I've toyed around with it and thought this summer is the summer I'm going to build my plan and then run with it. Well, I had shared it with a friend, and I already have people that are like, we want to hire you. I'm like, whoa, 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 I'm not ready. Like in my head, I'm like, I don't have a contract. I have nothing. So I guess like you said, you started small, but then my challenge is, how do you deal with, and I'll just be frank, and I'm sorry if anyone on the call doesn't like this language, but pain in the ass parents. Like, because that's probably one part of my job I do not enjoy, and I'm going to accrue those type of people because they're paying me. And so how do you manage that challenge?
I think that that's a really great question. And, I find a lot of students of mine really not the Ivy League students. They're really sort of the state university. Like, do I get into, and actually I have several students from Illinois. I got into like a group by Illinois Central College. Like, I'm trying to think which
Like
town it is.
Astoria area.
Yeah. And so, they're talking about like Champaign and Urbana,
Mhm.
sorry, that's so hard to get into. And where am I going to go? Should I go out of state? Should I go to U of I? Should I go to Iowa State? And I find the people I draw in are probably more state university, maybe a private school or two. That's where I feel the most comfortable. And that's sort of where my curriculum and book we kind of have focused on, because that's who kind of gets left behind. And I just don't feel like it's as tedious sometimes as some of the Ivy League stuff, because that is a lot of expectations, right? And reality versus expectation of where they're going and really what type of student they are. That's half of it, is managing those parent expectations. But that's where you really have to just create your structure. Like, this is how many times we're going to have a session. I meet with my families once a month, and I always say that I can always request additional meetings, but they cannot. But they can email me, they can text me. So you just have to create some boundaries, and that really helps, to kind of flush that out for you and what services that you want to do. Obviously, if they're coming later, like if they were coming in August, we might have to speed up the process because they're late, but they get like 12 sessions. So whether that's in a 6-month period or a 4-month period, I charge the same and they get the same service. So, but yeah, I find that people really, I document a lot. So whenever I have a session with a student, I always follow up right afterwards, and I CC the parents, and I said, this is Alex's plan. They're going to do this, 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 and this. And if the kid doesn't do it, I can be like, I'm
Right.
always on top of it. So I put the onus on the student, and then we can say we did everything that we can to stay on top of that. So did that help answer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's great, and if you're gonna do both for a while, it's nice just to say, I can only take on 2 or 3. Try it out
Right.
and build your materials, build what you want, and then see if that's something you want to continue with. It is scary if you've been in the system for 15 years. That's a big jump, right? There
Yeah,
is a
and I'm looking at leaving, and I understand,
Yeah,
like I won't be able to provide this service to the students I already serve. And
yeah.
so I'm hoping that, it will be neighboring schools. And then,
Mhm.
so I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
No, and that's where thumbtack and sort of, very putting the information out there and being upfront, and my institution tried to scare me a little bit and it was like, oh, I don't know. I said, I won't do it. I laid the groundwork. I'd rather be open and honest about it and
Mhm.
say, this is what I do. I will not obviously advertise to any students. I will not take on any of my own students. So if you come at the school saying this is what you're doing, I think it's better than like him-hawing around it, and then they find out differently.
Well,
So
how is it any different than, like, I have teacher friends that are charging the tutor all summer long? So, like, how, or after school tutoring.
yeah.
So part of me, I'm kind of like, how is this any different than what these teachers are doing when I'm doing it in my time?
Yep. Yeah. And that's where you just have to be. And I'm always very good at documenting the times that we met, the days that we met, because I want to protect myself. Right. So I do try to tread lightly on that. So, but no, it's the same thing, right? As long as it's on your own personal time, there shouldn't be any issues. But you definitely want to look at your operating procedures and policies just to make sure like there's nothing that would, interfere.
Understand.
Yeah, no. Life of New, I saw that you said, so your international school counselor, that's awesome. Did that for several years. Definitely the international world, there's a lot of need all over. And I know when I was in Nicaragua and Africa and so forth, a lot of kids wanted to go to school in the States or abroad. I have one of my Illinois kids once is thinking Canada or England right now. And so getting to know international admissions is very different than US admissions. So definitely something to consider. Did you want to add anything to that or asking questions?
Well, your book definitely focuses on the U.S. admissions, and you're correct. Working in the international sphere, you have to know a good bit about a lot of different admissions procedures. But I think in my experience with the particular country that I've worked in, the students definitely lean more towards the U.S. schools, particularly the ones on the coasts. The East Coast schools, and of course the California schools tend to be the more popular ones.
Mhm. Yeah, when I was in Nicaragua, like everybody wanted to come to Florida. And then a lot of Catholic schools, like they were looking at the Creighton's of the world or Loyola and stuff like that. But their admissions and how international admissions recruit is so different than recruiting. Because when I was in Nicaragua, like Brown would come through and Loyola and all these, colleges that changed lives. And I mean, it was like nothing to call it admissions rep and talk to them. And a kid got into these schools, came to Florida, and it was like pulling teeth. Like it was so hard to get even admissions to come to our high school, and we were like the number one high school. It's just a very different because they don't pay financial aid and they have a different admission criteria for international. Um, but no, yeah, no, my book specifically is more on the American US version, but I still think there's a lot of truth to it for all students, right? This the college knowledge and how the US system works in general. I will say we are looking, so with I really, when I wrote, I think I sent out one of my books today. When I wrote the Florida book, I wanted it Florida state specific. Like I wanted like my Florida students to have this information for this scholarship with the universities they're going to most likely go to. And so I really wanted really built for Florida students to have. So it took me a long time to sort of pivot to the national model. But we are looking, if anyone's interested in, we're looking for mini books. So like Life Anew, whatever your first name is. Sorry, I didn't catch it. Like we're looking for people to write mini books just on international schools or colleges and universities and that sort of admissions process, or Illinois or California. So if anyone watching might be interested in sort of writing and partnering, might be a good way to dip your toes in the field as well. You can let me know that as well.
Yeah, my name is New Kasha, hence the Life of New.
Awesome.
But yeah, that would be something I'd be interested in exploring some more.
Awesome. Well, definitely, you have my email there. I think, yeah, at the bottom, you can do a
Yep.
Sterk, yep, at collegeunmazed.com or info at collegeunmazed.com. It comes both. But yeah, definitely. I'm going to be on vacation here, but write me an email and we can Zoom after this. I would love to hear if you guys, and it would follow the same sort of infographic fun I like things that are engaging, right? Things that actually keep the attention of students and parents. So, but yeah, let me know for sure. Um, Thank you. I don't have any other questions unless Leslie or New, if you have anything else left.
No, I don't. I was just typing in the chat that I was going to run off, but thank you for your time. This was wonderful. And I'm going to holler at you. And when you get back from vacation, just holler at me back.
I will. Thank you. Pleasure to meet you, Anu. Thank you. And I hope to connect with you soon. And thank you for all of you watching this as a recording. You guys have a great day and let me know if you need anything else. Always happy to collaborate.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.